अब डॉक्यूमेंट आ गया।
हाँ सर, गो टू साइनिंग, इफ यू कैन क्लिक, व्हाट इज इट?
साइन, जहाँ लिखा है साइन, वहां मैं कैसे साइन करूँ? किसी के तो साइन हो रखे हैं यहाँ पर,
हाँ,
और
उनकी
मेरी
तरफ
जहाँ
से।
मैंने साइन करना है वहां लिखा हुआ है वर्ड साइन, तो मैं साइन कैसे करूँ?
एक सेकंड से मैं देख लेती हूँ सर, वहां पे एक एरो आ रहा है।
हाँ
इफ यू कैन क्लिक दिस, व्हाट इज इट टेकिंग?
हाँ,
तो
मेरे
देखिए
साइन आ
आपका ऑटोमेटिक एक आ रहा है, अरुण चावला।
गए, आ गए, आ गए।
बस वही
अडॉप्ट एंड साइन
अडॉप्ट एंड
कर दूं?
साइन सर। हाँ
कर
जी
दूं?
सर, हाँ जी सर, हाँ जी सर।
गलत होएगा तो मजे आ जाएंगे तुम्हारे को।
सर मेरा गला दबा दीजिएगा।
उसके बाद
बस अब हो गया सर।
हो गया। नेक्स्ट लिखा हुआ है, अभी पता नहीं क्या।
अच्छा नेक्स्ट देख लीजिए सर, मेरे पास नहीं आ रहा है
फिनिश,
बिकॉज।
फिनिश, फिनिश कर दिया मैंने।
ठीक है सर।
फिनिश, ठीक है, हो गया आई थिंक।
यस सर, ठीक है, थैंक यू सर।
ओके।
I think Mr. Rajput has also joined.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, sir. Happy Diwali to you.
Happy Diwali to you also.
सर आप देखो कितना आप काम करवाते हो, दिवाली वाले दिन भी काम करवा रहे हो आप हमसे।
दिवाली तो कल है यार। ये नहीं पता था कि चेम्बर्स में एक हफ्ता पहले ही लोग काम करना बंद कर देते हैं।
That's a good one, sir. आप चेम्बर के आदमी हो सर, मैं तो एम्प्लॉय हूँ।
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Mr. Jha.
Happy Diwali.
Happy Diwali to you also.
Good afternoon,
Mr.
Mr.
Arun Kumar has also joined, I think.
Yes, yes, I'm here. Yes.
Good afternoon, Mr. Arun Kumar.
Good afternoon. How are you all?
Good, good, good. We call you Professor or we call you Mr.
Whatever is fine, you know. I think these.
Professor.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon. It doesn't make a
First
difference.
of all, you know, before we start, I want to actually thank you for coming and sharing your thoughts with us. We have been working on this platform for almost 8-9 years.
Right.
Trying to sensitize people as
Yes.
to how illicit trade creates illicit economy.
Yes.
And
Yes.
this economy has a far-reaching implications
Yes.
for the society at large.
Correct.
So we've been kind of trying to sensitize people.
Yes.
And we have very eminent people who are helping us in this cause, and everybody is helping pro bono.
Yes.
So I am thankful to all of them and to you.
Thank you.
Especially today, because this is first of our new initiative
Yes.
that we're starting in conversation with.
Right.
So,
right.
Najib Shah will be in conversation with you on this
Yes.
very important topic that you worked so much in the past.
Yes, he's an expert in this area. I have worked on the black economy, but he's the expert on this area. You know, I suppose during his career as well, he must have got a lot of experience, you know, about what's going on. So he's the real expert.
Good afternoon, Professor. I'm no expert.
Well, that's not true. You know, as you know, in Central Board of Excise and Customs, you must have dealt with this day in, day out. So you have practical experience as well as, you know, I'm told by your colleagues that you're very well read. So you've got a lot of experience as well as information.
No.
Well read is understatement, Professor, I can tell you.
Yes, yes. Yes.
He is an extremely deep and very well versed with every aspect of economy.
Yes.
A very, very accomplished person, and you know, we've kind of benefited from his experience and knowledge on this
right
on this platform.
So it's my privilege that I'll be in conversation with him.
No, my
Yes,
privilege.
and it is our privilege to listen to both of you.
Okay, thank you for saying that. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Mr. Shah. How are you?
Very well, thank you. Good afternoon, Mr. Chawla. How are you?
All well, sir. Thank you. I think Swati, it's 3.
Yes, sir. So it's 3 p.m. So with your permission, Mr. Rajput, if we can start the proceedings.
Yeah, sure. We can go live.
Yes, sir. We are live.
नहीं iPad पे है chat है meeting settings है
I think you'll have to mute everybody.
Good afternoon once again to all of you. May I request Mr. Anil Rajput, Chairman FICCI Cascade, to please begin the proceedings of the day by formally welcome our guest today, Professor Arun Kumar and Mr. Najib Shah.
Good afternoon and a very warm welcome to all of you in this new series that FICCI Cascade is starting in conversation with. It's an exciting platform on FICCI Cascade where we look forward to sharing insights, discussing thoughts and understanding various facets of illicit trade and economy with our esteemed guests. We are delighted to have our first guest today, Professor Arun Kumar, Malcolm Adiseshiah Chair Professor, Institute of Social Sciences. Professor Kumar, as we are all aware, is an expert on development, public finance, public policy, and macroeconomics. He has also written extensively about Black economy. His book, The Black Economy in India, has broken new grounds in macroeconomics and on the thinking about the Indian economy and development. Thank you for joining us, and we look forward to hearing your views on Black economy, its connection to illicit trade, and remedial measures. I also take this opportunity to welcome Mr. Najib Shah. Mr. Shah needs no introduction. He is former chairman, CBIC, and a member of FICCI Cascade think tank. It is well known that the global economy is significantly impacted by the illicit trade, such as smuggling and counterfeiting, which makes up a multi-billion-dollar illegal industry. It negatively impacts legitimate economic activity and facilitates an underground economy and organized crime that deprives governments of revenues for vital public services, forces higher burden on taxpayers, incurs job losses, and exposes consumers to dangerous and ineffective products. In the past 10 years, the magnitude of illicit trade has grown from US $350 billion to about 3 trillion US dollars, representing 10% of the global trade, and hence it has rightly being termed as the crime of 21st century by FBI. FICCI has been focusing on the need to curb the problem of growing illicit trade in counterfeits, pass-offs, and smuggled goods, and accordingly has dedicated a forum, Cascade, Committee Against Smuggling and Counterfeiting Activities Destroying the Economy. In the Indian context, a report by FICCI Cascade estimated that due to illicit trade, The loss to 7 industry sectors was over rupees 1 lakh crore, increasing 44% between 2011 and 12 and 13-14. The total loss to the government on account of this was a colossal 39,000 crore in 2014. Over the years, it has only grown to adversely impacting our nation's economy. A more recent study by Cascade titled Invisible Enemy, Impact of Smuggling on Indian Economy and Employment also estimated that over 16 lakh jobs were lost due to smuggling activities in just 5 sectors of the economy in 2017 and 18. It is clear that illicit trade is undeniably one of the greatest risks globally. Unfortunately, the problem has only compounded in the recent COVID crisis, where criminals have used this pandemic as an opportunity to increase their nefarious activities, causing significant damage to the economy and nation, health and safety of the consumer. FICCI Cascade, in pursuance of its agenda, has been organizing series of multi-stakeholder dialogue to tackle this adversary and spread awareness about the socio-economic impact of illicit trade. Today's interaction is another step in that direction that will help us deep dive into the issue at hand. I'm sure Professor Arun Kumar would share with the audience what are the causes of black money, what it is bad for economy, what needs to be done by the policymakers to disincentivize generation of black money, especially with regard to illegal economy. I would like to conclude by saying that innovation and investment are keys to economic growth and sustainability of business. India at this juncture cannot afford to ignore either its attempt to better the living conditions of its huge and growing population and move up in the value chain in the world economy. It must therefore check and substantially reduce the illicit market operation and create conducive environment for growth and development. Once again, I welcome Professor Arun Kumar and look forward to an insightful dialogue. May I now request Mr. Najib Shah to take over the session. Over to you, Mr. Shah, and thank you very much. Jai Hind.
Thank you very much, Mr. Rajput, for your words of introduction. And welcome once again, Professor Arun Kumar, for joining us in this in-conversation session. We are meeting on Dhanteras Day and on the eve of Diwali. So I guess greetings and best wishes for Diwali and the year going forward are in order. We should hope and pray that Goddess Lakshmi's benevolence is showered on us. But then, Professor, as you have extensively written, Goddess Lakshmi has indeed showered on us. But unfortunately, a large portion of that has gone to the black economy. So without any further ado, may I request you now to explain for our benefit, how do you define black economy? And then we'll take this forward. Over to you, Professor.
Okay. So, black economy, as you well know, is generated both in legal and illegal sectors. In legal sector, you commit an illegality to generate black incomes. And in the illegal sector, it's anyway illegal. So what are legal sectors? That those are sectors permitted by the economy. So you have agriculture, industry, trade. So all the sectors which are called the national account statistics, you have 9 major sectors. So all of them are legal sectors. They are allowed by law. But illegal activities could be like smuggling, drug trafficking, theft and crime, etc. So the incomes generated there are, black incomes. But in legal sector, you commit an illegality. So for instance, under invoicing, over invoicing, or if I'm a doctor, I see 50 patients, but I declare the income of only 20 patients. Or if I'm a teacher, I don't declare my tuition income, I commit an illegality, and through that I generate black income. So therefore, in a sense, what I have done is I've tried to define it in an analytical sense, because what you can also have is multiple counting of black income. So for instance, in an economy, when you produce a sugar, then the sugar first goes out of the factory gate, and there it used to pay excise duty earlier, then it would pay octroi, then it would pay sales tax, then the profit would pay corporation tax, and then the income tax would be there on the dividend that was distributed. So there are 5 or 6 taxes on a given production. But if you count each one separately, then I call it multiple counting of black income. It's actually one factor income, that is the sugar that is evaded, that is generating these 5 taxes. Now, when you consider the white economy, then in the white economy, you count that sugar production only once. You don't count it 5 times because it pays 5 taxes. So in the black economy also, you have to count it once as factor income. So therefore, the definition I have come up with, and I've explained it in great detail in my black economy book, is that these are factor incomes. These should not be transfer incomes, because in the economy, you can also generate transfer income. So for instance, if I sell my house, I bought it for 10 lakh, I'm selling it for 20 lakh. So this is a capital gain. But these are only transfer income. No real production is involved in that, except for the brokerage. So I don't want to confuse you about brokerage, etc. But just think of it. 10 lakh house going for 20 lakh. So you make a capital gain of 10 lakh. That's only a transfer income. That's not a factor income. So I wouldn't count that. So that's why, everybody says real estate is the biggest generator of black income. And I argue that real estate is not the generator, it's a circulator of black income. So somebody's black income comes to me when I sell my house, So it's only circulating the black income. So similarly, bribes are also transfer incomes. And similarly, secondary stock market. Say if I sell the ACC share, ACC doesn't get the money. It's the person who's selling it is getting the money. So again, it's a transfer income. It doesn't affect the production in the ACC. So leaving us out all these transfer income, that's why I say that black incomes are factor income. And which kind of factor income? These are property incomes. And these property incomes mean profit, interest, rent, and dividend. The reason these are property incomes and not wage incomes is because wage is a cost. So I inflate the wages to generate a black income. So I may employ 100 people, but I may declare that I have employed 200 people, So like in Satyam's case, you had some 12,000 fictitious employees, so their wages became black incomes. So therefore, wages as cost, they are not generating black income. It's the property income, So therefore, my definition is factor income, property income, not declared to the direct tax authorities. And why only direct tax authorities? Because that's the last tax. So you don't count the excise duty evasion and then the sales tax evasion and then the octroi evasion and then the corporate tax evasion and then so just the final this thing. So this is my broad definition, and this avoids multiple counting. Otherwise, many other people who had measured the black economy, they did multiple counting. They counted the excise duty evasion, then the sales tax evasion, then the income tax evasion, then the corporate tax evasion, and that will actually give you a very high figure, which is incorrect. So it is an analytical definition, which gives you a very neat definition. And what Professor Caldo did in 1955-56, when he came to India to measure it, he used this basically. So from him, I got the idea. He didn't define it, but I'm the first one to have defined it and then measured it, Everybody else just measured something and called it black.
Having said that, Professor, every time a factor income, or
Yes.
to put it differently, every time a tax is evaded, no doubt the money involved is the same. And it's at the final place at the direct tax stage where the taxation takes place. But have I not evaded tax at multiple places? Though it's not black in economy per se, I have to that extent given lesser taxes to the government than what I ought to have.
That's correct. That's absolutely correct. So like in the white economy, if you're producing sugar, that one, say unit of sugar, 1 kilo of sugar, you will pay excise duty, then you pay octroi, then you pay sales tax, then you pay a corporation tax, and you pay income tax. So one factor income will pay 5 taxes. Okay. But you will call it one factor income. You won't call it 5 factor incomes because paying 5 taxes, So the amount of tax paid is yes more, but the income is only one. So similarly in the black economy, because we always express the black economy as a fraction of the white economy. So therefore, to make it comparable, you have to have the same definition. If you use a different definition for black economy and different for white economy, then you can't say black economy is 40% of GDP. Okay, then it'd be wrong. It'll be like dividing oranges by apples. So therefore, you're right. The tax evasion is more, but the income evaded is one and the same. So when we estimate the size of black economy, then we have to treat it once. But when I'm estimating the tax evaded, then I have to take all the taxes evaded.
And you argue that tax evasion per se doesn't result in black economy. Can I counter argue and say that, look, when I have paid lesser tax, to that extent, the money which I have saved is contributing to the black economy?
No, so I haven't said that exactly. What I've said is that, a factor income, property income, that is not paying the direct tax. So it is a tax evasion.
Okay.
But the reason I'm saying, is that, that there's a difference between the cause and the source of black income generation.
Yes.
The cause of black income generation is the illegality. The source can be a tax evasion. Source can be an indirect tax evasion. Source can be something else, So the sources may be different. Like in PDS, public distribution system, I take away half the wheat and I put earth in it. That's an illegality. So the source is public distribution system, but the cause is illegality. So my argument is that the cause of black income generation is illegality, and the sources can be many.
It's a fair point, Professor. I mean, I absolutely am with you on that. I was just trying to labor the point to get this clarity further.
Fair enough. Yeah.
Having defined it, you have gone on to very bravely, I must say, estimate the quantum of the black economy, and you have put a figure of 60-odd% as a percentage of the GDP as being black. How did you arrive at that estimate, Professor?
Okay, so in the literature there are 4 broad methods by which black economy is measured. So one is called the survey approach, another is called the input-output approach, the third is called the monetarist approach, and the fourth is the fiscal approach. So I'm using the fiscal approach, and Professor Caldor used the fiscal approach, Vanchu used the fiscal approach, the NIPFP committee used the fiscal approach, Chopra, which came out, and Gupta, which came out earlier, they also used the fiscal approach. So, in other words, it's what's called the broadly fiscal approach. Let me just briefly explain what the fiscal approach does is to look at each sector separately. Whereas the monetarist approach will look at the entire economy as an aggregate. Whereas, you have very different methods of generating black income in every sector, So the way it would be done in trade, it would be different from the way it would be done in, say, agriculture, the way it would be done, say, in manufacturing, and within manufacturing, different industries would do it in different ways. So therefore, the fiscal approach disaggregates, So first disaggregation is between legal sectors and illegal sectors. The monetarist approach doesn't differentiate between the legal and the illegal sectors also, Survey approach can do that, Survey approach, you can have separate surveys. So like Transparency International does survey of police black income generation, or the judiciary, or the education sector, So basically in the fiscal approach, we are using all these, and then we are aggregating. So first disaggregation is between legal and illegal, and then within the legal different sectors, how organized and unorganized. And by and large, unorganized sector incomes are way below the taxable limit. So whether we are able to capture the unorganized sector's contribution to GDP or not, it's not black, So basically, bulk of the black income generation is in the organized sector, And therefore, in the organized sector, you look at the different sectors. And the way NIPFP had done it was to look at the income tax data and compare that with what it should have paid as the income tax, these sectors. And but I found several kinds of mistakes in there, even though I was part of the NIPFP study in 1983 to 85. But so I got one of my students to correct for those errors. And then I corrected some of the mistakes that got left behind there. Like, for instance, capital gains was included. Now, capital gains being a transfer income should not have been included, So I excluded some of these things, and then I came to the estimate in 95, 96, that it had become 40% of GDP. Then what I did was, because further studies after that were not done, so what I did was I did a regression analysis. I looked at all the fiscal approaches, 55, 56, 1970, 1980, 81, and then 1995, 96. And then using certain, parameters, I projected it to 2012, 13. Now, there are huge problems in that. There's no doubt that, any of these methods, there are huge problems in them. But the point is, you see, it's like I give the example that, which was given by Professor Baran in his book review, Caldor was criticizing him, saying, look, you are talking about something that we cannot visualize, we cannot observe. So Baran said, look, I have a bottle of, some drink, and I know there's water and I know there's alcohol. Now, I cannot separate them, but doesn't mean there's no alcohol in it or that there's no water in it. So even if I cannot separate things well, I still have to say it's a mixture of the two. So to the best extent that I can, I must measure it, So that's the point I'm making, that, even though the estimates of black are not as good as of white, but the estimates of black themselves affect the estimates of white. Because if an industry is not declaring its output fully, then the white economy data is also fouled up. And then, what happens in the black economy, as you may have seen, the entire white economy data gets fouled up because I'm overinflating costs. So when I do underestimation and under invoicing and over invoicing, I may be buying 1 crore worth of cotton, but I'll declare I bought 1.5 crores. So my input is higher. And when I'm selling the cloth, I may be selling 100 yards, but I'm declaring I'm only selling 90 yards. So my output is wrong. So my input output ratios are incorrect. When my input output ratios are incorrect, then what happens to my planning? My planning goes awry. Similarly, my estimation of the rate of growth of the economy goes wrong. So I've been arguing that there are 4 rates of growth in an economy. One is the black economy rate of growth. The second is the white economy rate of growth. So the total economy, black plus white, is a combination of the two. So the actual rate of growth is the weighted average of black and white economies. Okay. So that lies between the black and the white economies. So if, say, the black economy rate of growth is 9% and the white economy rate of growth is, say, 6%, then take the weighted average, it would turn out to be 7%. Okay. So it's higher than what the government declares. But then there's a 4th rate of growth, which I call the potential rate of growth. What is the potential rate of growth? The potential rate of growth is the one, if the black economy was 0, then what would be the rate of growth? And that I found is 5% greater than the declared rate of growth by the government. So in the 70s and 80s, when the economy is growing at, say, 5%, it could have grown at 8%. When in the last, 10 years, it's grown at 7%, it could have grown at 12%, So the potential rate of growth of the economy, when the black economy is absent, would be 5% higher. And why is that? That is because the black economy brings in a lot of inefficiencies in the system. So I have characterized the black economy as digging holes and filling holes. So what is digging holes and filling holes? It means during daytime, you set one person to dig a hole. At night, you set one person to fill the hole. When you do that, next morning, there's 0 output, but 2 incomes have been earned. So I call this activity without productivity. And any number of examples are available. For instance, the police is busy collecting hafta rather than taking care of law and order, So the police is being paid, but the law and order is deteriorating. Similarly, you have a road, you don't put enough tar in it, you don't put enough aggregate, the rains come, it gets washed away. So we are repairing the same road rather than building new roads. So our transport gets affected because we have potholed roads, the petrol and the diesel consumption goes up, the axles break, and the transportation takes more time. So therefore, the black economy brings in huge inefficiencies. So a given investment is not giving you the productivity it should give. And that's why the productivity of capital goes down. And when the productivity of capital goes down, then the rate of growth of the economy suffers. So if the black economy was not there, the potential rate of growth would be 5% higher than what we have. So if you add, because in the 70s, the black economy had become more than 10%. So from 70s to the present, if you add 5% every year, today the economy would have been $20 trillion. It would have been the same size as the US economy rather than being $2.5 trillion. So this is the missed development of the economy, because of the black economy.
That is huge. And Professor, I noticed in your book, I must confess I've gone through it in great detail. You have also said that the contribution by illegal activities like drugs and extortion and smuggling, this is in the context of your 1995-96, 40% where you had estimated what the economy was only around 8%. And quite frankly, that is sweet music to my ears, because I all along thought that our contribution to the black economy was much, much more than 8%. And how do you arrive at this particular estimate? It's very interesting.
So, what I have done is I have projected, from the NIPFP study, basically to arrive at this estimate. NIPFP had given some estimate of smuggling, of, illegality and so on. So I'm just projecting that further, that keeping the share the same as in the NIPFP study. because you need further studies, for estimating illegal activity. So like your study, and the smuggling studies of partner country data,
Yes.
what I think in your study you call the mirror
Yes.
image, right? So
Yes.
those studies have to be done, and unfortunately, we cannot keep projecting it further and further because the nature of illegal activity keeps changing. So more and more has to be done, But as I said, I have used the NIPFP study to project that and then come to the figure of 8%. So it's not independently estimated.
Okay. And going forward, because in 2016-17, you have estimated that the black economy is to the extent of 62%.
Yes, for 2012. For 2012.
It's 2012.
Yeah,
okay.
Paper was published in 2016, but the study was, projecting up to 2012.
What would you estimate be for, if I were to ask for 2018-19, it could have only grown further?
Well, if one could project, the way I had projected, then of course it would be even higher. But, again, I'll have to look at the parameters because, I said there are various parameters that determine the size of black economy. So in my regression analysis, I use those parameters like trade under invoicing and, so on and so forth to project. But, those values can change. So therefore, I keep saying that assuming that the ratio of black to white remains same after 2012-13, then we can say it's 62% of GDP. But I'm not saying because I have not done the study further, so I cannot claim. So my caveat is that assuming it's the same as in 2012-13, then it would be 62% of GDP. But to say anything more, I'd have to do further study on that.
And Professor, one more interesting fact which has come out in your study and also substantiated by the Parliamentary Committee report submitted to the Lok Sabha in 2019 was that a very small percentage of this only goes abroad.
Yes.
Most of this black economy is very much within the country.
Yeah,
so this concern which we always have of flight of capital, is it largely misplaced?
No, it's not misplaced, and I had a sort of debate on this with Dave Carr, because Dave Carr came out with a study of flight of capital from India. He was working with the Global Financial Integrity, this thing, and I was actually doing a study along with them. And unfortunately, because we differed, he got upset with me, and then he did not, further have communication with me. But the point that we have actually produced a paper, and one of my MPhil students did a thesis, on this extending Dave Carr's work. We have not published that paper because we found that a lot of theoretical problems about how our balance of payments get affected by smuggling and by misinvoicing. So that theoretical paper we could not complete, and then I got involved in various other studies. But along with Professor Shaumen Chattopadhyay, we have got a paper, and there we estimated the size of this illegal trade. From 1948 to 2012. Dave Carr had done till 2008. We extended that to 2012, and we included various things that he did not include. So we estimated that $2 trillion was the opportunity cost lost to the economy between 1948 and 2012. Okay, but that doesn't mean that $2 trillion is lying abroad. Okay, and that came to the annual figure came to about 10% of the black income generated. So that's why we're saying that 10% went out, 90% remain in the country. Now we have to distinguish between income and assets. The black wealth is different from black income. Black income is what you generate annually, and black wealth is what you have accumulated over the time. So as you know, the distinction in economics, that first I do an activity and I earn an income. Out of that income, I first do my consumption, then the balance is saved, and I want a return on that, so I invested. When I invested, it becomes part of my wealth. Okay, and that therefore, you have activity, then income, then consumption, then saving, then investment, then wealth. So income should not be confused with wealth. So the money accumulated abroad is the wealth, and the annual flow is 10%. So $2 trillion the opportunity cost, and why we're calling it the opportunity cost? Because a lot of it has been used up. So the money that goes abroad can be used to invest abroad. It can be, say, for education of children, for the health, requirements and so on. And then round tripping. Part of that money that is going abroad every year is round trip back to India through Cayman Island or through Mauritius or Singapore or various things. So therefore, the money that would be lying abroad would not be $2 trillion. It will be much less than $2 trillion. Okay, but we don't have, an estimate of how much is the net amount that is still there. We only know that, the opportunity cost was $2 trillion. Okay, between 1948 and 2012. Okay, so that's why we keep saying that only 10% goes abroad, and a part of it is round trip back, maybe 30% or 40% round trip back through the stock market and through the other things. So what would be left abroad would not be $2 trillion. And therefore, we need to worry about the black income generation here in India, because it's out of that the money is going abroad through flight of capital, hawala, through various under-invoicing, over-invoicing mechanisms and so on. So if we can stop the black income generation here in India, then we'll be able to tackle it abroad. Second is that tackling it abroad is very difficult because the money goes out through what's called the process of layering. So process of layering means that there are 90 tax havens, and I can take my money out to one tax haven, then to a second tax haven, then to a third tax haven, fourth, fifth, and the sixth one will be in Switzerland. So when you ask the Swiss government how much of Indian money is lying there, then they'll say that this is not Indian money, because if money has moved from, say, Jersey Island, that's a British principality. So they'll call it British money. So that's why when you ask the Swiss government, they only say 8,000 crores or 14,000 crores is lying in Swiss bank account from India. That's the money directly belonging to the Indians. But the process of layering that's used means that you confuse the trail completely. Okay, so therefore, for the government to figure out where the money is, which 90 tax havens it is, and how much is there in each one is almost impossible. That's why my argument has been, if we can get some money back, fine. But otherwise, let's focus on the black income generation here in India. Let's try and check it here so that the 10% that's going abroad will be smaller percentage, and slowly maybe be able to take care of it.
So which brings us to the $1 million question. What do we do now to check the black economy being exponentially growing within the country itself?
So, for that, we have to look at the causes, because any remedy requires causes. If we don't understand the causes, we cannot remedy it. So I keep saying that we are like the 7 blind men and the elephant. Each blind person touches a different part of the elephant and causes something else. So one touches the leg and says it's a pillar of a building. One touches the tail, calls it a broom. One touches the trunk and calls it a hose pipe. So one is solving the problem of the hose pipe. Another is solving the problem of the building. Third is solving the problem of the broom. But none is solving the problem of the elephant. So, you have different kinds of things being said by different kinds of people. So you talk to lawyers, you talk to NGOs, you talk to, businessmen, they suggest different things. But that's because that's their perspective. That's the limited amount of black economy that they see, and then they make suggestions. But we need to have a holistic view of the black economy. So, for instance, in the literature, there's a idea that, high taxes cause black income generation, or high degree of controls cause black income generation. Now, my argument is that these are only partial explanations. These are not the full explanation. The full explanation is that it's in the illegality. You can commit an illegality and evade taxes. You can commit an illegality and evade controls. So that's why I call those the sources. The cause is the illegality. So we have to check illegality. Now, therefore, the question arises, how come illegality has been growing? Because Caldor estimated the size of black economy to be 4 to 5% of GDP in 1955, 55, 56. Banchu is 7%, NIPFP 18%, my 95, 96, 40%, and now 62%. That means illegality is growing. So illegality is now in 62% of the economic activity for it to be able to generate. That means it's systematic and systemic. It's not anecdotal. It's not that I generate black income one day, but not the next day. I generate black income 1 week, but not the next week. So if I have got the systems in place for under-invoicing and over-invoicing, I'll use it systematically. I will not do it 1 day or 1 week or like that. It'd be systematically, okay? So where I would bribe and where I would, have my accountant do the accounting, or where I'd have the chemist fudge the, the input-output ratio, it'll be a very systematic thing, So black economy is systematic. Now, for it to be systematic, the law and order machinery in the country, the state as a whole, has to be involved in it. Because if the state is not involved in it, then you can check the illegality, So therefore, what is the state? It consists of the political class, the executive class, and the executive would include the police, the bureaucracy, and the judiciary, and then the corrupt businessmen. So that's why I call it triad. This triad consists of the corrupt politicians, the corrupt executive, and the corrupt businessmen who all benefit out of it, So this triad is what needs to be checked. And B.V. Kumar, the Customs Intelligence Chief, wrote a book in 1990, and he pointed out very interesting thing, and that is that the illegality, the people committing illegality, the criminals, they have become part of the nexus. And that's why large number of politicians have a criminal background, because before 1983, according to him, criminals used to support the politicians from outside, but now they've entered. So you have in the legislatures, you have large number of criminals who have entered, and that then weakens the fight against the black economy, So in a sense, you have to break this triad. If you don't break the triad, then the black income generation would continue because those in power are benefiting from the black economy. So this triad is what needs to be undermined. And that's where, my argument is that the problem is structural. So as I've been arguing, there have been at least 40 committees and commissions which have gone into different aspects of black economy since 1948, when the first committee was there in post-independence India. Then you had Caldor, then you had, Santhanam, then Vanshu, and then you had the P.C. Alexander Committee and the L.K. Jha Committee, and so on and so forth, So you had many committees, commissions, parliamentary committees, estimates committee, etc. And they made thousands of suggestions. And hundreds have been implemented, but the black economy continues to grow. And the reason is that black economy is not just technically, narrowly economic. It is actually a political economy issue. It's in the politics, it's in the way the structures have been formed, the triad has been formed. So it's in the political economy of the situation that we need to deal with it. So we keep changing rules, we keep changing laws to try and plug this, plug that. And therefore the income tax rules have become very complicated. The 1960 Act was rather simple. And because we kept trying to change laws and rules to check the black economy, it became more and more complicated. So the complexity then helps in generation of black income, because more complex the rules, the more difficult they are to implement and more easy it becomes to actually generate black income. So what I've been arguing is for simplicity of rules, for simplicity of taxation, okay, and also structural changes. Structural changes meaning accountability of the politicians, accountability of the businessmen, accountability of the executive, that's the police, the bureaucracy, and the judiciary. So you have to bring in accountability at every level. When you bring in accountability at every level, then only will you be able to check the black income generation. Now, this is not to say that they're not honest businessmen, that they're not honest politicians, that they're not honest bureaucrats or policemen or judges, but the direction in which we have moved is that actually there are more and more dishonest people and less of the honest ones, So it's a systemic problem. If, say, some businessman says, I'm not going to bribe anymore, I'm going to work honestly, then it becomes very difficult for him because he'd get victimized, So therefore, even an honest businessman cannot fight it independently, It has to be a whole business class as a whole, the political class as a whole, and their accountability becomes very important. So at the end of the day, you have to bring in accountability at every level for this to happen. Now, why is it that accountability does not come? Why is it that, everybody recognizes that the black economy has set the economy back? What could be a $20 trillion economy is a $2.5 trillion economy. We are losing $17.5 trillion, The economy, our economic and military strength today be far greater than what we have today, So we are losing out, we are not able to accomplish what we need to accomplish in our economy, in our society, So it is urgent to do it, but it has to be collective. It cannot be individual. And therefore, we need to recognize how to change this, how to bring about accountability. So that is the crucial thing. And that's a long-term thing. So I have in my book, I have suggested what could be the long-term steps, what could be the medium-term steps, and what could be the short-term steps. But the short-term steps will not work unless they're structured properly within the long-term accountability issues.
It is a stupendous challenge, and from what you rightly have pointed out, it's going to be a very long haul. But having said that, I'd just like to bring in again what Cascade itself is doing in its own small little way.
Right.
We realize that it's a serious challenge which we have. We are focusing only on smuggling and counterfeiting activities, and not the entire extent of gamut of activities which you mentioned, which contribute to the black economy per se. So we're trying to generate awareness basically amongst people at large to say that, look, do not buy a smuggled product. do not buy a counterfeit product. A counterfeit product can be damaging for you, injurious to your health. A smuggled product could be a fake too, for all that you know, and not paying taxes damages the economy. So we're trying to catch them young at schools and colleges and create this awareness, engage with policymakers. Yes, it is a sort of a solution which you rightly pointed out is of a blind man touching an elephant, trying to have quick fixes for policies here and there. But we're trying to do that, trying to engage with the enforcement officials, telling them of best practices, engaging with other experts from across the globe and bringing those practices into the country. So this is what Cascade has been doing. How do you think Cascade should go forward? Because obviously we have our limitations, but I think we, in our little way, do contribute in bringing some awareness to the extent of the problem by highlighting it, by having conversations with experts like you. What do you think that Cascade can do going forward?
I think, you are a part of an industry group, and it's very important that within the industry group, you create the awareness about it, And if businessmen realize that actually, if the economy was 8 times larger, each one of them would be 8 times larger. So,
Yes.
Rather than have a frog in the well attitude that, okay, whatever I can get, let me get today. Okay, but if the economy is 1/8 of what it could be, then I'd also be at least 1/8 of that, So I'm also losing out. So even though in a short-term perspective, I'm gaining by doing tax evasion or by violating rules, etc. But in the long-term sense, I'm losing out big time, So this awareness of the black economy, smuggling, counterfeiting, how it damages the economy, how it damages the employment, etc. That awareness needs to be spread. So therefore, you're on the right track. You are sensitizing your people, but it has to also go into the wider society. So your steps to try and create awareness in the schools and colleges is also a good thing. Okay, but it has to be in the political economy realm. If it is not in the wider political economy realm, then you'll remain confined to small things. And then many of the businessmen that you may be interacting with may say, okay, theoretically it sounds very good, but what can I do today for myself? And I'll do that. So it has to be a wider awareness that has to be created, and without that wider awareness, these things will not change. Your efforts are good, but they will only have limited impact, because somebody who starts becoming honest, so just think about it. I keep giving this example, that we lie at the drop of a hat in India. I had gone to Finland, for a big conference, a global conference in 2001. And there we were having discussion with the NGOs, etc. And there somebody got up and said something. So I got up and said, but somebody can lie. Now, 2 people got up and said, in our country, we don't lie. Now, can we say that in India? For instance, I was going for my nephew's wedding to Pittsburgh, and now when you're going, those days in 2002-3, we carried a lot of sweets with us. Now that's food stuff. In customs, you have to declare that, are you carrying food stuff or not? My wife kept saying, no, don't declare, otherwise they'll confiscate it. We have bought so much, spent so much money, So I said, no, I have to declare that we are carrying food stuff, but it's cooked food stuff. And then we were allowed to go. Now, when we reached my sister's house, there were a lot of friends there, Americans, Indians, etc. All Indians said, Arun, you are a fool. All Americans said, you did the right thing. Now you can see the perception difference, The perception in India is that we can get away, with whatever we are doing. So the illegality we think is something that we can get away with. So we are very feudal minded. We think that if we are in position of power, then we can violate rules. So as is said, what's the use of being in power if I cannot benefit my friends and family and so on, and if somebody doesn't benefit their friends and family, people get upset, I was very good friends with, not to be said outside, with Mr. Krishan Kant, who became the vice president. Then some family members said, can you get me directorship of the board of a bank? So I said, sorry. and they stopped speaking to me. So, in a sense, positions of power are looked upon in a very feudal way to give benefits. When you do that, then you're going to bend rules. Those in power will bend rules. And you can see that in our political parties. When the political party, the top leadership, doesn't allow any dissent, then what kind of democratic practice will there be in the party, and what kind of democratic practice will they have when they get to power? So electoral reforms are very crucial. party reforms are very crucial so that, you begin to have more democratic functioning in the parties. You don't have this kind of thing. So our rulers have to be democratic minded, have to have a sense of democracy and not feudalism. Our political parties are run like feudal, like Bapauti. I pass it on to my progeny, I pass it on to my children, right? So when you have that attitude, then you look down upon everybody else and you think it's your privilege to make money, to privilege to do whatever you want to do. So therefore, that's why I said it's structural. These structural things are very important. Once you do that, then I think the medium term and the short term policies will be also successful. So like in the short term, you need to check hawala, you need to check banking secrecy, because banking secrecy is now used by all private sector banks to do hawala. The HSBC bank was caught doing hawala, right? The Punjab National Bank was caught doing hawala, so it's public sector, private sector banks, everybody is doing hawala. So therefore, banking secrecy you can check, hawala you can check, so things like those you can do in the short run. But if that will not work unless you have the big structural change in a political system. And that's why I think it has to be begun from the top. It's not something that at the lower level, like in St. Stephen's College where I did my physics BSc. I'm from physics who straight into economics. So there we used to have a moral science class. And, the principal used to take our moral science class, Principal Sarkar. And hardly 4 of us used to attend it, But that didn't mean that having a moral science class meant that the students will also become morally this thing. When they will go out into the system and they see the system so corrupt, they get used to it, They adopt the same thing because that's the way to progress. So I think this feudal attitude that is there, the idea that for me, the post is to do illegality, those things have to be checked. That's why I keep saying accountability to the public. And the politician can be made accountable to the public if the public then demands accountability from them. Public also is not demanding accountability,
So that's what, Cascade is trying to do what it can, Professor, in creating awareness. Obviously, our ambit is so very limited. But having said that, we are trying to also engage with the political leadership to talk of the impact of these illegalities on the economy. And like you rightly pointed out, the fact that we could have been that much more economically viable and stronger, but for these, the Black economy thriving within the country. Thank you so much, Professor, for your time. You have been most gracious with your time. You have shared so much of your experience and expertise, and more power to your pen. I really look forward to reading more about, you write on a range of topics. I look forward to reading about it, and more power to your pen, and take care and be safe. Happy Diwali once again to you and your family.
Thanks, and happy Diwali to you all. But just one final thing I'd say, it
Yes,
also
indeed.
sets back us technologically.
Yes.
Because it's easy to generate profit without having technological change. So therefore, the economy itself does not drive technology the way it should drive. The competition is not on technology. Competition or can I generate black money through some means? So our technological backwardness and China has moved far ahead of us in technology, because they have driven technology. They have driven. So that's another big problem, because today globalization means technology. The one who has technology will dominate. The one who doesn't have technology will fall behind. And that's why our trade with China has become so adverse, because on technology, they have moved ahead. So black economy also undermines technology. It also undermines our global position. So therefore, if we consider all this, we must check the black economy. So thanks a lot for this interaction. And I hope it has meant something. And again, best wishes for Diwali.
Thank you so much, Professor. It has meant a lot. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. May I request Mr. Arun Chawla, Deputy Secretary General FICCI, to formally propose the vote of thanks.
Thank you, Swati. Esteemed participants, on your behalf and on behalf of FICCI, I extend a very warm and profuse thanks to our chief guest, Professor Arun Kumar, Malcolm Adiseshiah Chair, Professor, Institute of Social Sciences. My profuse thanks also to Mr. Najib Shah, former Chairman CBIC and think tank member FICCI Cascade, and Mr. Anil Rajput, Chairman FICCI Cascade. What a fascinating conversation indeed, on a subject which has attracted a lot of attention in our country, on the black money and illicit trade. Ladies and gentlemen, Professor Kumar's book, The Black Economy, is a referencer. a masterpiece when it comes to understanding about the Black economy. But this conversation has definitely cleared much of our muddled precepts about how Black economy operates, how the Black money gets generated, not only through the illegal activity, but an eye-opener, indeed, that some of the legal sectors are also prone to generation and utilization of Black money than the legal sector. There is absolutely no doubt that the manifestation of Black money in social, economic, and political space of our lives has a debilitating effect on the institutions of governance and conduct of public policy in the country. But there is a palpable connection between Black economy and illicit trade, which is what we target as Cascade. So illicit trading activities such as smuggling and counterfeiting is a major challenge faced by the industry today, which leads to loss of revenue and generation of unaccounted money, which contributes to the Black economy. Ladies and gentlemen, I must emphasize that illicit trade, which is a natural fallout of the Black economy, distorts competition and decreases the costs of the non-compliant businesses compared to their competitors. As such, it can lead to failures of honest businesses and consequential negative impact on the whole economy. Professor Kumar, I can very safely assume that everyone here subscribes to your thoughts, and there is a need for adequate policy interventions to see that the Black economy and illicit trade does not thrive in our country. Your foremost suggestion that we must trace the sources, the causes of illegality, and then seek solutions. Steps which can be classified into short-term and long-term. Taking strict actions against any kind of illegal activity is imperative in the larger interest of the economy. And we all can say that this will also strengthen India's economic power and help achieve its growth benchmarks. Extremely interesting insights, I must say. Ladies and gentlemen, I would also like to convey my gratitude to Mr. Najib Shah for being here and making the conversation extremely lively and interesting. Let me also thank Mr. Anil Rajput for the intense passion that he displays in spearheading FICCI's Cascades initiatives across the length and breadth of the country, with the single most agenda of safeguarding economy, consumer interest, and health of the nation. Let me conclude by saying that while several measures are being undertaken by the government, both in the form of policy intervention and awareness generation to combat this problem of illicit trade and the concomitant underground economy, a lot more needs to be done. But we are sure that the baby steps taken by Cascade will in due course take the country by the storm, thereby curbing this menace. FICCI Cascade is committed to the cause of curbing this menace and work towards an effective strategy to strengthen our systems and increase enforcement against such malpractices. I once again thank Professor Arun Kumar for an extremely insightful and thought-provoking dialogue and hope that the experience sharing will be benefited by one and all today. With these words, I wish everyone a very happy and enjoyable Diwali. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you for joining. A very happy Diwali from Team Cascade to all of you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Happy Diwali.
Thank you.
Same
Thank
to
you very
you.
much.
Same to you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir. Happy Diwali.